Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast, where we bring you the best growth strategies from the world's experts to help build your business fast. And now, here's your host, Mark Fidelman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast. Joining me today is Samuel Donner, and we're going to talk about 4-minute podcast episode drops, as in that's a new thing in marketing, 4 minutes. I know our attention spans are shrinking, but very interested in what he has to say about this and how, that is moving the needle for us marketers and some of us salespeople. So, Samuel, welcome to the show. And do you go by Sam or Samuel?
Yeah, Sam is fine. Hello, Mark's audience.
All right. Can you give us a little bit of a background of yourself in 100 words or less? Try to keep it to 100.
Yeah, for sure. So I graduated UCLA mechanical engineering a few years ago, realized I was kind of bored with it and started doing production work, ended up getting a few clients after college and then grew out a team to 30 people. And now we produce our own podcast, Finding Founders, but we also make podcasts for television and film, kind of like as in the IP game.
Okay. And you have your own podcast, right?
Yes, called Finding Founders.
And what is that about? Just finding people that start businesses?
Yeah. So, it started off when I was studying mechanical engineering. I was applying to tons and tons of jobs and was literally getting no callbacks. And then I started doing some freelance work and I did some work with Netflix and realized I liked that more. And then started to try to apply to full-time gigs for creative work and just got nothing back. And at one point I'm like, okay, I'm using all these editing skills. How can I apply it to a different medium and maybe actually secure an interview with some of these people that I wanted to work for? And I initially just interviewed my roommate, Tim Connors, who had a cap and gown company, edited that together. And then that next interview ended up being with the founder of American Apparel. And then things kind of snowballed from there. And so we started with entrepreneurs in Los Angeles, but now we're doing series around the world. So a couple weeks ago, I was in Puerto Rico doing a series on Puerto Rican entrepreneurs and delving into a question on that came up when I was looking at Puerto Rico and saw that their entrepreneurial community grew a ton after the 2017 Hurricane Maria, and they have this burgeoning entrepreneurship fraternity post 2017 that's much more vibrant than it was before the destruction. And so the question was how does destruction sow the seeds of opportunity and growth? And so now we're doing these series that doing kind of close-up looks at entrepreneurial communities around the world.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Certainly there's a lot of interest in that. And how many episodes have you done so far?
We've done around 80. So we started doing so I started doing this 2 years ago, but was splitting that between full-time work when I was working for some other companies, and then in the beginning it was school, but now for the past year we've been doing an episode every week.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. And I know how difficult these can be to put together and to edit them and all the rest of that. So I really admire people that do one a day. I don't know how they do it. They must not have any life.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing one a day. One a week is enough for us. But we're also specializing in is narrative audio. So we put in music and sound effects and voiceover. We have this whole 6-week production process that goes to the whole team, where we start from the research team and then going through script writing and then going to the editing team, the music department, and all the different
full production. Whereas, I'm just here with the beginner's mind, just kind of winging it based on my interest. And I just try to pull things out of people as best I can. But you've got a full production going.
We're trying. I wouldn't quite say full, but we're definitely getting there.
Well, if you're scripting it out and you got music and you got special effects, you're doing a lot more than I do.
We have the special effects, not just sound effects. We put in explosions too. It's a real 4D experience.
I might even do an episode like that where I put in all these special effects just to see if it's annoying or if it actually works. Just to
you gotta have like the buzzer, like the right after something.
Exactly. All right, let's get to the heart of it. So, as you know, I like to show people what others are doing that's innovative and unique and that works. I mean, most importantly, that it works. So, I want to talk about this concept of a 4-minute podcast episode drop. First of all, if you're not doing podcasts, you should really look into it. It's not for everybody. And frankly, I think if you can do video well, video probably pays off better, but there's a lot more expense when it comes to creating videos on YouTube. So going back to podcasts, this 4-minute podcast episode drop, what is it? Can you tell us what that means and what that looks like?
Yeah. And just on the podcasting up for everyone note, I actually think it's like this very interesting medium that is more what podcasting is, at least how I see it, is it's top of the funnel content. And so when you sit down and record like a 2-hour podcast, you not only have, and if you're recording video, you not only have that podcast, but then what you can do is you can distribute that content into small videos that you can put to YouTube. You can attach graphics to that and make it even more engaging videos. You can even go lower down in the funnel and make them small, like Instagram videos or like bite-sized videos like TikTok. Or you can even transcribe it and turn it into a podcast. Or you can take little pieces of that transcription and put it in like as a tweet in Twitter. And so I think you're right in a sense that like many times podcasts won't be the thing that people will end up consuming, but it can be a starting point in terms of content production. So you can get all the people that are consuming content elsewhere. And so that's how we're viewing it. Like we release, 5 pieces of content between LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram each week. And we have like a social media team that puts all that together. And so I think that top of the funnel marketing is, or content production is where podcasts really shine.
Why 4 minutes?
But 4-minute podcasts, podcast drops. So I was talking to the founder or the COO of Wondery, Jen Sargent, and Wondery is probably, I think it's like the 5th largest podcast producer. And they've had tons of #1 podcasts throughout the last couple of years. And they've gotten their distribution and their launches for podcast series down to a science. And they've tried a bunch of different things. So one of the classic podcast like drops that people did in the early days of podcasts is they would just shout each other out, at the beginning of the episode. Like I would say, hey, like if I was on Finding Founders, like the old way to do it would be like, hey, Mark is doing Digital Brand Builder. You should go check out his podcast, right? And that worked fairly well coming from the host. And then people, what they did is they like in that original one, they would shout out the host and then just play the rest of the regular episodes. But then it evolved to saying, hey, you should go check out Mark's podcast. Let me play the full episode. And so that's like, that would what's called like an episode swap, where you would play their episode on your feed and they'd play your episode on their feed. And then it got to like, okay, they would listen to that whole episode, but did they have a reason to actually go to your feed and take the extra few seconds to subscribe? And often they didn't. So the next thing is like, hey, can you post half that episode on the feed? And that would get people, but the like cutoff in terms of like the critical mass of people to actually get over to that other feed would drop significantly after the 15-minute mark. And so Wondery did this series of tests to see what does at what minute mark are people engaged enough to have like a reason to jump over to another feed and check them out. Like what, like how much of the podcast do they have to listen to make that jump? And then how long is it until people just fall off? And they found that 4 minutes is that sweet spot. If you can put 4 minutes of a really engaging part of your podcast in someone else's feed, there is the highest likelihood that people will jump over.
I mean, videos do that all the time, but I guess without listening to these 4 minute podcasts, what's kind of the framework of how they're fitting things into those 4 minutes? Introduce one problem and solve it quickly, or how does it work?
So I guess in terms of format for those 4 minute little like mini episodes, is you want to have a hook within the first like 20 seconds. You want something that gives a reason to keep listening. So an unanswered question or a moment of, I guess in a narrative podcast, like for us, it's usually an unanswered question with stakes. So for example, where there was this guy, Andrew Warner, that we interviewed a couple weeks ago. His episode's coming out in 2 weeks. And he was losing $8 million like every couple months for his company. He was in massive amounts of debt. And we put that's like comes maybe towards the end of the episode. We put that little clip at the front, but with the unanswered question, hey, like we don't know what is going to happen next. So that's really important to have that hook at the beginning. And then you have your intro that establishes who you are and what you're doing. That might be longer than maybe it is on your regular feed for like your regular listeners. On this 4 minute one, you want it to be really fleshed out so people know what they're listening to and why. And then you have maybe the first couple minutes of your episode that ends on a question. So ends on a reason that people should continue listening.
Okay. And where would somebody get a listen as to these 4 minute episodes? Maybe on your podcast, you're doing them now?
Yeah. So we actually usually do them on other people's feeds. So, I mean, we've actually tried all the different, all those different methods. So we're actually doing a 4 minute drop with this guy, Jim Quick, in a week. So definitely check out his feed soon. But I'd say the best place to look at those is Wondery. Wondery will play those in the middle of their episodes, those 4 minute clips at the end of their episodes, especially. I think Wondery really is the leader in creating those. Yeah, Wondery is incredible with that, and they also I think it works best. It can work with any podcast, but when you have a certain narrative arc to your podcast, that can help a lot. And I think you can create narrative arcs in talk show style podcasts as well. It might be a little easier when you're actually creating like that narrative, maybe like preemptively with a script like we do. But really that narrative can be created with anyone. It just maybe it takes a little bit of extra work.
Okay. So you're saying that this is the way to do the 4 minute episode is to build it within another episode, or would you recommend that they could do it outside of, or just independently of any other episode?
So to answer that question, well, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're answering, but I also want to address this in terms of giving, in terms of where to place that 4 minute episode. You want to place it on someone else's podcast, on someone else's. So you want to place it on someone else's podcast, but you want to also place it, like integrate it into their content. So it would usually come as a mid-roll on their podcast. So after they've listened.
Why would they do that? I mean, for what benefit do they get?
For us, we have extremely high production value. So we're essentially making a documentary about these people's lives. And we've gotten feedback where like the people that we've talked to have cried listening to their episode, because it frames their life in such a way that makes them just reflect on all they have accomplished and how far they have to go. And so obviously it's an easier ask when there's an emotional tie to that content. But let's say you're making a different kind of content that maybe doesn't pull on the emotional heartstrings as much. The other way to do that would just be to do a swap. So you do it for me and I do it for you, right? And so that's probably the easiest way to get started. But for us, like, we're able to reach these massive audiences really quickly with people with millions of downloads because of that, pulling on the emotional heartstrings. But, if you're just getting started, then what you would do is you would look at someone who has a similar audience size to you. Podcasts are tricky because there's not much there's not much data on that. So I would say that you just look at reviews. Someone who has similar reviews to you. It's not an incredibly accurate proxy, but it's kind of like the best one that I've found.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the key thing for me would be, okay, I'm producing a 4-minute episode and I want somebody else to embed it within their own episode. Well, that would be challenging if somebody came to me, unless it was incredibly valuable to my audience. And then I'd be thinking, why don't they just drop it within their own? Why are they dropping within mine unless they want to reach my audience? Which that's
the point, is to reach your audience. Like, this is a clip from a larger episode in which they that entices them to jump audiences. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to have that audience crossover.
Right. So there's obviously a call to action at the end of it, or the host comes on and says,
yeah. So the call to action should ideally come from the person hosting the podcast. So, for example, when we go on Jim Quick's podcast in I think it's next week or so, what he'll do is he'll record an intro saying, hey, I just did a podcast with these guys. You should go check it out. Here's a 4-minute clip, right? And maybe it'll be a little bit longer than that. And then right after, he says, hey, if you want to listen to more, go to Finding Founders and check out what we're putting together.
And then whatever it is that you're doing in those 4 minutes, does it relate to the actual episode of the podcast host?
So for us, it does. Yeah. So like, we put Jim Quick's episode on the Jim Quick podcast. What does Jim Quick talk about?
What does Jim Quick talk about?
So, I mean, he talks about learning and like brain improvement, and so that's actually kind of like another part of our strategy is we've been targeting specifically entrepreneurs with a podcast. And so we know that when we tap into their audience is already primed for content that is like ours, and that people we know that if they like what Jim Quick's putting out, they're probably going to like us too, because we've already screened his audience or his content and made the decision, hey, like, this guy is similar to ours. So when we put together the episode on him and they see, hey, like, there's this really interesting podcast that is like well produced, that is on this guy that we've been listening to for years, then what they'll do is they'll listen to that 4-minute clip. They'll get the suggestion from Jim, and then those listeners will jump over to our feed, subscribe to our podcast, and start listening.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you guys are doing a lot of work around that, and obviously it must be paying off, or you wouldn't continue to do it.
Yeah, no, it definitely has been paying off.
What are the benefits that you're getting as a result of doing this? Because I know a lot of people are thinking the same thing I'm thinking is, yeah, I mean, high production value. It's got to relate to the person's episode, maybe the subject matter of that episode. So what am I going to get at the end of the day?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen like 300% growth in the podcast, going from just a couple thousand listens to like tens of thousands of listens in a matter of a couple months since we started doing this strategy a couple months ago. And like, not only are like we seeing those conversions in terms of like the actual listener numbers, but we're getting a lot of emails that are basically saying, hey, we love what you put together. We got one from this guy a couple of days ago saying like, hey, I'm actually just reading it off. This was yesterday. I appreciate you asking on your episode, when is enough? When is it enough? This is a guy from Andrew Warner's audience. Also exploring the serendipity of creativity, talking about how Pixar failed and the evolution of user-generated content. He was curious about like what other things or other like topics that like we were going to explore, and he actually suggested some topics for future episodes. And so like we're engaging other people's audiences at a level where they'll actually write an email to us. So it's been very like in terms of returns, the returns have been super high already. So
if the returns have been super high, I mean, what would be, are you going to go into, I don't know, hyper mode into producing these things and putting it all over, wherever you can, as long as it relates to what you're doing, I would assume.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're trying to do one of these with every person we interview. The past, like, when we have 10 or so in the queue right now, and the past 10 have been founders with podcasts. So we've been doubling down on this method. And I really think it's one of the best methods you could do, but it doesn't necessarily have to be with founders. Like if you're in the health and wellness space, talking about health and wellness with that guest, and then trying to piece together, like let's say you have let's just like use your podcast as an example. If you have this, if you were specifically targeting other people who are talking about like digital brand questions. So like, for example, Chris Do, if you have a conversation with Chris Do and you put together a really kick-ass 4-minute little piece and say, hey, Chris, like it was a pleasure talking to you. Do you mind if we put this, this little 4-minute episode in like, in your episode when in a couple weeks? And he might do that if he sees enough value in it. Or if you could do that with someone maybe closer to your own audience size. I feel like it's not too hard of an ask, especially if you do it for someone else. And then now you're both growing your audiences. Yeah.
So growing your audiences. And then from that, once your audience has grown, you're upselling, cross-selling some things that you're selling to entrepreneurs in. Where's the monetization?
So for me, the monetization actually comes from TV IP. So I'm almost using this as a biz dev tool. And I've like met a ton of people that are like, wow, I really enjoyed what you put together for me. Can you create this about this topic so I can sell it to TV? And so that's what I'm currently working on right now is that project for TV. And because like right now, podcast IP is like the hottest IP for TV and film. What like books were, 10 years ago, is what podcasts are now. So like we're having a bunch of films and TV shows that are based on podcasts. I think one of the biggest examples right now recently was Homecoming, was a Gimlet podcast. They sold that to Amazon and they made a couple series out of it for Amazon Prime. And then Wondery's really doubling down on that model. They make most of the money, not from the ad revenue from the people that are listening to those podcasts, but they're making it because they're selling the IP to TV and film. So like what this podcast is doing is it's a really cheap way to test whether an idea hits a market. So they can produce this idea for pretty cheap, but comparatively to like what TV would cost. And then they're like, hey, like so many people are listening to this podcast. We have proof of concept. Now let's make a show from it that we know could do well because we already have this big audience that's listening to this one podcast. Imagine what we could do if we put it in a more widely consumed medium like TV.
Got it. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to follow you guys and see what happens as a result. But for now, let's wrap things up. And we do so by asking 2 final questions. The first of which is, what's the hottest digital marketing technology that you're recommending these days?
I'd say, I mean, specifically for podcast advertisement, I'd say Castbox. Yeah, Castbox it's a platform, but they also do really they do really well with ads. So they are one of the only podcast platforms that actively, I think something about their AI will updates in real time to whatever the listener is doing in that moment. And so they can 10 times the amount of downloads you get for your dollar, as opposed to other other things that I've tried. Specifically, I did Overcast, and per dollar, this is something that I actually tried out. I got 10 times the amount of downloads from Castbox than I did with Overcast with the same amount of money. So Castbox does it really well. They have their algorithm is just a lot better. It's much smarter. It updates in real time to what the user is, or how the user is interacting with their podcast platform.
So obviously all podcast owners get it on, put their podcast on Castbox, or is it automatically pulled? How do you get it up there?
So you don't necessarily have to host your podcast on Castbox to advertise on it. You just have to reach out to one of the representatives. And I think they also have an advertising portal on their website. And that's how you can put a ad on there. And it's really you can just do a banner ad. So all you need is a picture and a short description, and that will do it in terms of bringing listeners to your episode.
So when you're listening to Castbox, and they say, let's just use mine, for example, they're very interested in digital marketing. And because of that, as long as I'm advertising with them, they'll show an ad for my podcast, and then that person's got the choice whether to check it out or not. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So, I mean, they'll have a banner ad at the end of similar podcasts. And what they'll do is say they're advertising at the end of two podcasts that are similar to your own, like podcast A and podcast B. Let's say 10 people will click on your advertisement from podcast A, and 5 will click from podcast B. What it will do is, because your ad on podcast A is performing better, they will allocate more impressions to that specific podcast in real time. And they'll constantly be updating it, where they will drive impressions based on where you're getting the most traffic or where you're sourcing the most traffic. Got it.
And it's relatively inexpensive to advertise there?
Well, no. I mean, kind of. It just depends on what your budget is. For us, they had a limit of $1,500, so a minimum of $1,500 to start. But they're rolling out a more, smaller round where you could try out 100 or so to check out what it does. But initially, just for their early users, they're doing the minimum is around $1,500.
Okay. All right. And you think that's worth it? I mean, what's the cost of acquisition there?
We were getting, for, I think, per dollar, I think we were getting 10 listens, 5 subscriptions, something like that. So pretty high.
Yeah. It sounds like their targeting is dead on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a long answer to question 1, but I was very interested in Castbox because I've heard of it before. Let's go to number 2. Who's the most influential person in marketing today?
I mean, I feel like this is a low-hanging fruit answer, but I've been just following Gary Vee a lot. I think what he's done in marketing has been incredible, and that's I've learned a lot from him in terms of that content funnel marketing and content model. That idea where you have podcasts at the top, and then you create little quick form videos from that. I learned a lot from him in terms of how to implement that strategy. So I think he's really, really ahead of the curve with that. And he was super bullish on TikTok really early, and that paid off well.
Yeah, I agree. So All right, so let's wrap things up. Where can people find you? I mean, you can find your podcast, the Finding Founders podcast, on like any major podcasting platform, of course. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, how would they find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can check us out on Finding Founders Podcast on Instagram. You could just DM us there. You could also go to our website. You could email me at sam@findingfounders.co. Check out our website, findingfounders.co. You can see all of all of the stuff that we're up to. We have a newsletter that you can subscribe to on that website. And we also do events every so often with like live events with our founders on various topics. Our last one actually was on TikTok. And that was an incredibly interesting thing to dive into. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find us. So check us out on all the Finding Founders platforms.
All right. Well, Sam, that was a very interesting and educational input on 4-minute podcast. I had no idea where this is going. It's very interesting how you're doing it, and I'm going to give it a shot. And if anyone wants to approach me and do some sort of trade, I'd be interested in doing that. I mean, I'm just curious as to how this would actually work. So with that, we're going to wrap things up, and really appreciate you being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.